Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you today. My name is Dr. Jonathan Westover, and I will be presenting on behalf of the team, myself and my wife, Dr. Jacque Westover. Today, we're going to be presenting on a joint project, and I'm really excited to be sharing it with you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so I can share this project. We're very proud of the work that we've been doing together this semester um, in both of our classes. It's been a unique experience, and so it's been a learning process, and it's in progress because we still have, several weeks of the semester left. So I will be sharing what we designed at the beginning of the semester, leading into the semester, how it's been going up to this point, the plan for the remainder of the semester, and maybe I can report back later next year just to let you know how it ended up finishing out. The title of our project is Cultivating Cross-Course Collaboration, a model for student consulting projects. Again, my name's Jonathan Westover, my wife, Jacque Westover. We're both professors in the business school at Utah Valley University. I teach human resource management, organizational leadership, change management, those sorts of courses. My wife teaches business calculus, business statistics, data analytics, those sorts of courses. Oh, here we go. Okay, to start off, I'll give you a quick overview of the scope of this and what we were trying to accomplish. In this presentation, I'll be discussing a unique cross-course collaborative model implemented at UVU between my organizational development and change class, my wife's advanced business statistics class, and a cross-listed integrated studies course. This fall semester, upper division undergraduate students formed a multidisciplinary team or group of interdisciplinary teams to complete a semester-long consulting project with UVU's Women in Business Impact Lab and the Social Impact Metrics Lab, or SIM Lab, here at UVU. And over to the side, you can see pictures of those two labs. The Women in Business Impact Lab below is within the School of Business. That's ran out of my department. I'm faculty and chair of the Organizational Leadership Department, and the SIM Lab is run out of our Center for Social Impact. I'm also the academic director of our Center for Social Impact. Through an iterative process of proposal development, data analysis, and solution implementation, students gained a valuable consulting experience while working across course boundaries. The model integrates skills from each discipline by having teams develop proposals, analyze data provided by the Impact Lab, and develop recommendations. Regular cross-team meetings between the classes allow students to leverage diverse expertise. This presentation will outline the course structure, team processes, challenges encountered, and lessons learned. And as I said, this is actually lessons learned in progress. Experiences to date suggest the model is enhancing students' collaborative and applied skills, and the cross-course approach can serve as a template for how institutions can run these types of projects when they're seeking to provide real-world experiences through multidisciplinary teamwork. All right, now let me give you a little bit of background to the two labs, and then I'll give you a little bit of background to the three different courses that are a part of this cross-disciplinary, multidisciplinary, and interdisciplinary joint project. First, the Women in Business Impact Lab. The tagline here is collaborating with community partners to support the advancement of women in the workplace. They do this by exploring issues impacting women in the workplace, hosting speaker and panel events, providing resources to increase organizational effectiveness, facilitating a community of practice, engaging students in community consulting projects, and building future talent for local businesses. And over to the right here, you can see the mission is, or the purpose of the Women in Business Impact Lab is to build a society that enables women to thrive in business. This is achieved by identifying issues relevant to women's leadership in organizations, creating knowledge through research and collaboratively advancing discussions about opportunities for women. I also am a research fellow with the Women in Business Impact Lab, and we do a lot of work in these various areas, different activities, research, community outreach, and it's a wonderful lab to be a part of. Next, I want to briefly introduce the Sim Lab. The Sim Lab is an opportunity to engage both in a curricular and co-curricular fashion with students and faculty working with community organizations to help them assess the impact that they're having and the way that they're meeting their stated needs and their proposed impact through their organization. The Social Impact Metrics Lab is a collaborative space where impact fellows, research assistants, staff, faculty, and community partners come together to tackle complex social challenges. This Sim Lab uses social change design to conduct comprehensive data analysis and inform strategic interventions. So below you can see what we do. The SimLab empowers students to conduct staff and faculty mentored evaluations of social impact programs for local organizations. By collaborating with community partners, we assess current impact, evaluate theories of change, and collect data to identify key gaps and opportunities for intervention design. As a hub for systems thinking and design thinking, the SimLab also hosts research workshops, competitions, and initiates and initiatives like social issue mapping and community partner tracking. Additionally, faculty members can submit SimLab project proposals, which if selected will be supported with funding and expert training. And this multi-class project is an example of that, where multiple faculty are doing a joint project in collaboration with and supported by the SimLab resources. So what we have here is we have a SimLab supported project across 3 courses that is working with a community partner organization, the Women in Business Impact Lab, to do social impact metrics research to help the Women in Business Impact Lab better understand how it's impacting the community. And the Women in Business Impact Lab is specifically collecting data to better help support initiatives for empowering women in business, to help women grow in their ability to have opportunities, to grow in leadership roles, and things like that. So we have 3 different courses involved in this initiative. The first is my organizational development and change class. This is a class that I've taught at UVU for many years. We always work on consulting projects. We have worked on consulting projects with many different organizations, from nonprofit to government agencies to startup businesses to well-established companies to huge global multinational companies. We've worked, with organizations that have as few as, a dozen employees to huge multinational firms that have 80,000 employees. And so working on these types of consulting projects are just what we always do. But I also like to try to work on projects with nonprofit organizations. And from time to time, we'll work on these types of social impact related consulting projects as well. In this class, you can see the course description here. Students will study the process of ensuring skills, or the class studies the process of ensuring skills, knowledge, abilities, and performance of the workforce meet the current and future individual, team, and organizational needs, includes the development, implementation, evaluation, activities, interventions, and programs that focus on customized organizational development and change, performance management, training and development, career development, and other unique employee or employee group needs. So it's all about change management and helping organizations be more effective, more efficient, and helping teams work better together and help organizations function more effectively. The second course is my wife's course, Management 3345. That's the Advanced Business Statistics or Business Statistics 2 class. It's the second in the series of business statistics courses. And usually it's upper division students who are finance majors or advanced quantitative students in various business disciplines, data analysis, or those sorts of things. Students in this course, building upon prerequisites and other statistics and data analytics courses, study advanced managerial concepts, and it includes multiple regression, ANOVA, test of hypotheses, time series techniques, emphasizes statistical modeling, statistical decision making, and is computation intensive. And then we have integrated studies. At UVU, we have a really unique interdisciplinary major called integrated studies, where students can combine two different fields of study by combining two different minors in two disparate fields of study. And then they join those two minor areas of study together, and then they work on a capstone that brings those two areas together in a joint project. That becomes their their integrated studies major. And one of their elective courses is this Integrated Studies 300R or repeated course, Topics in Integrated Studies. This course introduces a variety of topics crossing disciplines in science, religion, philosophy, history, literature, business, technology, and the arts. Topics vary from semester to semester, but the course remains modular in structure, research and writing intensive, requires a final research paper, and involves writing across the curriculum. So you may look at these and you may say, how in the world do these classes go together, and how can they work together on one type of project? Well, it was kind of serendipitous, honestly. So what had happened was back in the spring of 2023, so this is a year and a half ago, I was doing one of the consulting projects I was doing in my HR 3550 class happened to be with the Women in Business Impact Lab. They had just they'd just done a big survey. They collected, 700 plus responses to their big survey. They needed help analyzing it and then transforming the analysis into actionable recommendations for organizations. And they decided to partner with my org development and change management class around those recommendations. I thought it looked like a really great consulting type project for my students to work on. And so we partnered with them. The challenge is my class is not a stats class. And so, I'm a researcher. I'm well versed in statistics. And so I just figured I'll just help my students. And they've all, or at least most of them, have taken an analytics class or a stats one class. And so I figured, they know the basics. I'll help them with the rest. And it's not a stats class. So really we just need to do the basic stuff anyways. And then we'll move on to recommendations and operationalizing and implementing, recommendations. That's the focus of the class. But it didn't go so well. It was very frustrating to the students because they really got caught up on the statistics piece. And there were pluses to it. There were good things about it, but it was frustrating to them. And that statistical knowledge piece was just a big gap in what we tried to do that semester. Well, that same semester, my wife was teaching her advanced business statistics class. And again, her students had all the statistical know-how. They had all that skill set, and they decided to work with the Women in Business Impact Lab as well. They were helping to analyze the data, and they had all that know-how to do all of that. And they were eating it up. They were loving it. She had a great group of students. They were digging in, finding all sorts of really great stuff there, running all sorts of great statistical models, wonderful findings. Okay. The problem was they weren't management majors, and a lot of them actually who were taking the course weren't even in the business school. A lot of them were like math majors or engineering students or people that were taking this statistics class that weren't even in the business school, weren't business students. And so taking the survey that was geared towards women in business and empowering women and those sorts of things, doing the data analysis was fine, but then taking it and trying to interpret it and come up with recommendations that made sense in a business setting, that was their weakness. So then it was a huge gap, right? And so both of us in our classes had elements of the project that worked really well, but we both had these huge gaps in what we did also. So our classes, they worked in part, but with the gaps, we were just talking over our classes one day. We were actually on a date night. We went out to dinner and we were going to a movie, and we were just kind of chatting about what worked and didn't work in our classes. And the thought hit me, we both work at the same university. We both work in the same business school. Our offices are literally like 50 feet away from each other. Um, we can just collaborate. Like, why don't we just have our classes work together? The gap in her class was what my students can do. The gap in my class is what her students can do. Why don't they just work together? And I'm also an affiliate faculty member with the Integrated Studies program. I happen to be in that role. And so I work with the Integrated Studies people. And so I reached out to them and I said, hey, this is a really great opportunity where we're doing this interdisciplinary type of project with the Women in Business Impact Lab and the Sim Lab and the Center for Social Impact. Let's bring in integrated studies students. And so we brought in integrated studies students as well for that interdisciplinary piece. And as we started to talk through it more and more, we realized this could work. This could be something that could be really, really cool. And we're husband and wife. We talk all the time. Maybe the communication piece that might be challenging to other people, other professors, we can just do it naturally, just in passing as I'm just chatting with my wife at night before bed. I'm like, hey, how are your students doing on their analysis on your project? When are they going to talk to my students? Just little things like that I can just do in real time. She can do it with me. And so we can have really clear, open, consistent communication. That's probably the hardest thing in doing these types of collaborative types of projects between professors, right? And so we decided to do it. We decided to give it a go, and we launched the project for this fall. Okay, so here is the course description for my class, or sorry, not the course description, the project description. My wife has a very similar project description in her class, just framed a little bit differently for her stats students. So you can see, I describe it for my students. This semester, students in 3 different classes will be working collaboratively with the Women in Business Impact Lab on consulting research project in collaboration with the Center for Social Impact and the Sim Lab. Students in the cross-listed organizational development class will form 4 to 5 project teams of 4 to 5 students each. Each team will develop an initial project proposal and then be matched with a corresponding team in the Stats 2 class, that advanced statistics class, who they will work with for the duration of the semester. After the proposal stage, these teams in each class will coordinate data analysis and interpretation, as well as the formation of data-driven practical applications and organizational recommendations. By the end of the semester, joint student teams in all 3 classes will work collaboratively on their final project presentations and reports. Each team will be completing their project, coming up with the best resources, recommendations, and project deliverables for both the Women in Business Impact Lab, which is their primary client, for use with future organizations that they may work with, as well as identifying 2 organizations from their own personal and professional networks that they can share their findings and recommendations with on behalf of the Women in Business Impact Lab at the end of the semester. So each of my student teams, in addition to doing this project for the Women in Business Impact Lab, are identifying 2 of their own client organizations that they're also developing these recommendations for, that they can present to and share recommendations with also. Teams will be in place by week 2, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then we invited our students to complete this consulting project team meeting time preference survey, because we know for students, one of the biggest challenges, because they're super busy, is just finding time for teams to meet. And not only do they have to find time to meet students in my class have to find time to meet with each other, but now my wife has students in a team, I have students in a team, and they then have to be able to meet with each other across classes also. We knew that would be challenging. And so we put together this time preference survey where we mapped out days of the week and different time segments, time chunks throughout the day, so they could identify when they're available, so we can match students up according to availability to make sure that that they could get together and that they could meet with each other. Okay, so once teams were formed, then we put them we tasked them with starting to think about their proposal of what they were going to focus in on. For my wife's students, their class is really broken up into 3 units of statistical analyses. And you can see that on the right-hand side of this slide. So they have their Unit 1 project, that was due in September, their Unit 2 project due in October, Unit 3 project in November, and then the final project, and they do that jointly with my students. Each unit project, they're doing more and more advanced types of statistical analyses. And at each stage, at each unit project stage, they're getting input from my students about the questions that my students have related to their proposal. And then they are running analyses based on those student questions from my class, and then giving those analyses back with interpretations. So then my students can understand what's happening in the data and then make recommendations. So that interchange is happening consistently throughout the semester, and until after Thanksgiving. So in about 2 weeks, they will then, the last 2 weeks of the semester, work jointly together on the final project preparation. They'll jointly work on the final presentation and on the final report to put that together. What you see over here on this timeline with these due dates, my wife put together, with each type of analyses that they're going to be doing for each project, she put together examples of some of the types of questions that they might try to answer. These aren't necessarily the exact questions that they're going to answer for my students. They're just the types of questions they might answer related to these types of analyses that correspond with the survey that my students have that the Women in Business Impact Lab collected data on. Okay. And over on the left-hand side, you can see just an example. These are some sample research questions. My students are tasked in their proposal stage to really zoom in on more specifically, what exactly do they want to research and what do they want to better understand about the experience of women in the workplace in Utah? How is that similar or different to men? Perhaps across different industries, in different job types, etc. And so here are some different types of research questions, broad questions, specific survey questions that maybe they want to zoom in on. And as they start to put together a really in-depth proposal, a project proposal that's about 5 pages long, they then are able to share the more detailed proposal and research questions with the advanced statistics students. So the advanced statistics students then know what types of analyses are they going to run, from the survey data, so that they can do their class projects. And it's this, we design the timing throughout the semester so that each stage that my students are doing then feed directly into the timeline for my wife's student unit projects for the statistics that they do. And then those students turn their projects into my wife. She can then do some quality control, do some grading, provide some feedback. Her students refine the data analysis. Then they meet with my students who then take the data. The stat students help to interpret it, help them to understand what the data means. Then my students have the data in time to do the next phase of their project, to do recommendations, interpretation, start to build some implementation. And it goes back and forth like that throughout the semester at different phases. So right now we're at this stage. We're at Unit 3 project stage. my wife's students just turned in their Unit 3 project. She literally is in the process right now of finishing the grading on the Unit 3 project and the feedback on the Unit 3 project. In fact, I think just yesterday, just last night, she finished that feedback and got it back to her students. So they are ready as of tomorrow, I believe, to do the handoff and have meetings with my students so they can do the handoff, provide the interpretation, and then my students are ready to start putting together their draft presentations so they can start to get some feedback on that. Okay, here is just an example of the survey. This is the second wave of the survey for the Women in Business Impact Lab. This is just the very front page of the informed consent for the survey. Our director, Dr. Kelly Hall, who led the charge on putting the survey together. We have a whole team of about 8 different professors who are part of the Women in Business Impact Lab, who are research fellows, who all contributed to designing the survey. The survey was then administered. The second wave of the survey collected a little over 550 responses from a stratified randomized sample throughout the United States. And then over on the right-hand side, you can see just a sampling, a selection of some of the types of questions that were asked in this survey. So, for example, for each of the statements about your job, please identify how much you agree or disagree that each applies to your job. And then so they'll answer questions about my job is secure, my income is high, my opportunities for advancement are high, my job is interesting, etc. And the respondents will answer all of these. This survey has questions around work quality characteristics, workplace environment, employee engagement, job satisfaction, leadership dimensions, all of those sorts of things. That's the nature of this survey. It's a fairly lengthy survey, so we have a lot of richness in the data, and it's been a lot of fun to dig into the data and to do a lot of analyses. And so these students are really helping though with it because they're providing a lot of manpower in doing some of the initial work around some analyses and digging into, what does it all mean and what can organizations do with this data? Okay, so the nuts and bolts of like how this works throughout the semester, I gave here. You can see a couple screenshots of what my students do each and every week. My students are expected to meet together every week of the semester outside of class for at least 30 minutes. And in this case, actually, it looks like they met for 20 minutes, but they're expected to meet weekly. And they have to fill out this form to talk about what they did, summary of the activities completed, what activities are in process. It's a very simple form, as you can see. It's not meant to be complicated. It's just meant for accountability. Every student gets frustrated with team projects, and every student has experiences where their team projects have not gone well, and sometimes they get frustrated with maybe they feel like there's been a free rider, some student who hasn't put in their fair share of the work into a project. And so this is one of the mechanisms that I put in place in my class just to hold students accountable. They meet weekly. They turn this in weekly. This is a weekly assignment. So I know exactly who is meeting, like who attends their meetings every week. I know who is in attendance. I know what they meet about every week. I know what assignments are given. I know what they're planning to do. I know what assignments were made versus what gets done, etc. It's not meant for me to micromanage, but it is meant for me to have a pulse on what is happening so that I can help, so that I can step in if necessary, but also so that I can hold them accountable and so they can hold each other accountable towards making steady progress. And because I have them do this every week, it allows them to make consistent, steady progress throughout the semester and not fall into the trap that many students will fall into, where they procrastinate, where they will, they think, oh, it's fine, we'll get to it. And then a week or two or three will go by and they realize, oh, we haven't done anything. And then all of a sudden they, they get nervous and they realize, oh my gosh, we haven't made any progress. No, they're making steady progress throughout the semester. This project will take, a combined effort of, if they have 5 students on their team, it'll probably take them a combination of about 150 hours throughout the semester for their team to do this project. That's about 30 hours each. Um, in a 15-week semester, that's a couple hours a week that they're spending. And if they do a couple hours a week, it's very manageable. Um, but if they don't and they start to procrastinate, it starts to build up very quickly. And then all of a sudden it becomes very unwieldy. So that's something that they're just building out over time. I also put another mechanism in place with my students where they do a midterm evaluation and an end of semester evaluation where they rate themselves and they rate each other on the quality and the quantity of their contributions to the team, as well as they rate any dysfunctional behaviors that they may observe either with themselves or their team members, and they're able to provide qualitative comments on what they observe in their team. This is also very helpful to me so that I can be fair in how I grade, so that I can give differential grading if there is differential effort or differential contributions in the team project. Um, so that there is again fairness and that students understand that there will be accountability. Okay, here on the next couple of slides, I just wanted to show an example. I'm not going to walk through all these statistics, but this is an example of just the first. So I showed you, if I go back here, here on my wife's due dates for her class, on the Unit 1 project, with just the very simple analyses, that the very first project that our students did, this is what you're seeing here on the next couple of slides. This is just a super simple analyses that her students did for that first project that they then met with my students, her student teams met with my student teams, and they walked through this very simple analyses of means, standard deviations, difference of means, differences of variation, etc. My students don't necessarily remember, they may have taken a stats class, but they don't necessarily remember what all of this means. And so my wife's students helped to run the analyses and then helped to interpret the analyses for them so they could understand what it meant. And then really provide a deep interpretation so that they could translate it into actionable recommendations for what organizations could actually do. Another page of just analysis, that basic kind of first level analysis that they did. Another page of difference of proportions that they did just with that first unit project. And then they did the same thing for Unit 2. They're doing the same thing for Unit 3. But for each unit, it's getting more sophisticated. They're going into deeper levels of analyses, with Unit 3 getting into different forms of regression analyses that are going to be really, really helpful for my students in fine-tuning the types of recommendations that they're making. Okay, last slide that I wanted to share. This is actually the cover slides, examples of the projects that my students did back in 2023, spring of 2023, because my students haven't finished their projects yet for this semester. They will be doing that in the next month, right? And they'll be somewhat similar. These projects were based on the first wave of data collected by the Women in Business Impact Lab back in 2023. The project that my students and my wife's students are working on this semester are based on the second wave of data collected in the spring of 2024. So it's a new wave of data. It was a second iteration of the survey, a more cleaned up version of the survey, an improved version of the survey. The data is better. We found that already in the analyses that we're doing. We're finding some really, really great um, results in the analyses that we're doing. And so we expect to have even better projects from our students, even though we had great projects from our students the first time we did it back in 2023, in spring of 2023. So here you can just see some examples of what my students did back in spring of 2023, just to give you an idea of the types of things that I'm going to be seeing from my students here in the next several weeks. Back in spring of 2023, I had a student team that looked at the gender wage gap epidemic and how organizations can avoid gender biased training, or how organizations can avoid that, how they can implement gender biased training. We had another team that looked at women in tech and the disparities of um, workplace experiences of women in tech versus men in tech. We had another group of students that looked specifically at workplace satisfaction and employee well-being, as well as compensation and flexibility factors for women versus men. And another group of students that looked at family inclusive benefits packages for both men and women, actually, in the state of Utah versus out of the state of Utah. Some really, really great projects. They created some really, really great resources for the Women in Business Impact Lab that they could then use as they were consulting with outside organizations. They came up with some really great findings and some really great materials. It was excellent then. It was excellent back in spring of 2023. And that was with all of the limitations, all of the gaps that I identified at the beginning of the presentation today. And so my wife and I are really excited to see what our students end up producing here in the next month. Because the way we designed the project this time, um, the gaps that we felt back in spring of 2023 in both of our classes, uh, we were able to marry our classes together to fit those gaps. What my class can do fills the gap of her class, and what her class can do fills the gaps of my class. There's certainly challenges. There's coordination challenges. There's communication challenges that happen anytime you have students working together in teams. And if you start to have students working across classes with other teams in another class, that makes it even more challenging. And we've certainly had to deal with some of that throughout the semester. But it greatly enriches the experience, and it also allows multiple skill sets to come together to produce even more amazing projects. So we're super thrilled to see what can come from that. I know she's talked with her students about it. I've talked with my students about it quite a bit. That this class that my students are going through, it's really preparing them for the workforce. They're getting a lot of skills. I mean, they're learning about organizational development and change management. They're learning about the models of change. They're learning about how to be consultants. Learning about project management, time management, client relations. They're developing those types of skills. They're learning about how to work effectively in teams, those sorts of things. Um, but they're learning also about how to work effectively um, with teams in a remote environment. One thing I didn't mention is that my students are in a virtual hybrid environment. We don't meet in person. We live stream once a week, and then the rest is asynchronous online. So we never meet in person. They don't meet in person in their teams. They meet on Zoom or on Teams. So their entire projects and their team meetings and everything that they're doing is virtual. We do have live streaming sessions, and they do live streaming team meetings, but it's not together. It's not in person. And so they're learning a very valuable skill of how distributed teams can work together effectively to get things done. But it's not just that. They're learning about cross-siloed, about breaking down silos and about cross-siloed team collaborations, which is going to be invaluable to them as they go out into the workplace. Because so often in organizations, we do get stuck in our little department or division. And a lot of times we have to be able to work effectively with teams outside of our area to be able to move projects forward. And it may be with a division or a department or an area that has a completely different skill set than what we have. And if we want to move a project forward, we have to combine our skill set with a completely disparate skill set, bring our skills together to accomplish something great. And that's what our classes are doing. We're bringing together three different classes, integrated studies with their interdisciplinary way of thinking, my business students with their organizational development and change management skills and way of thinking, and my wife's advanced statistics students with a completely different way of making sense of the world and their skill set and their way of thinking, all of us with the same goal of helping the Women in Business Impact Lab and their mission of supporting women, empowering women in the workplace, empowering women in business, and helping women take on leadership roles and whatnot. Um, it's super exciting. We're thrilled with how it's been going up to this point. Of course, it hasn't been without its challenges, but it's been very rewarding, and we're excited to see how it wraps up. With that, I think I probably overstayed my welcome and I've taken enough time, so I'm going to end there. It's been a real pleasure. I appreciate you watching our video. If you have any questions, please reach out. I've put our names and our emails there. You can reach out to myself or to my wife. Both of us are happy to take um, your questions. Please email us, connect with us on LinkedIn or anything like that, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much.